going to argue that we humans change the way the planet works, you have to come up with extraordinary evidence. I'm patient. I hope I live long enough, but I'm waiting. And we've not had that evidence. If you're not a scientist, then look at history. It was warm in Roman times. It was very warm. There were crops grown in the north of England which you couldn't grow now. The Romans and the Greeks were scantily clad, not because they were going to an orgy, well they might have been, but it was warm, much warmer than now, and all of a sudden it got cold. Now during that 600-year warm period of Roman and Greek times, sea level didn't rise, and then it became cold in the Dark Ages. What happened? We had famine, we had starvation, we had a breakdown of social structures, and then it warmed up again in the medieval warming. And in the medieval warming, it was so warm, at least 5 degrees warmer than now, that crops were grown on Greenland, barley and wheat. The Vikings had sheep and cattle in areas now that are covered with ice. It was much warmer. And then it suddenly cooled into the Little Ice Age, where we had some exceptionally cold periods when the sun got a bit lazy, and we bounced out of that Little Ice Age about 1850. And what do you think temperature's going to do after the Little Ice Age? Do you think it's going to go down? Well, of course not. And so the Little Ice Age was a very, very key driver of depopulation and famine in Europe. The Little Ice Age was at a time when people were so weakened that they got wiped out by the plague. So change is normal. We cannot view the planet Earth as being a stable planet where we once lived in a wonderful Arcadia where nothing changed and it was perfect. Climate has always changed. More recently we've seen changes to the climate by doctoring of diagrams and ClimateGate, and I've read all the emails and it's a really interesting eye-opener. This is a systematic, calculated, deliberate fraud during which these people have tried to stop papers get published in the refereed scientific literature, tried to set up referees to stop papers getting published, tried to bully editors of journals and to demonise dissent. And for me, that is not science. So I give that introduction of the past. And the past, the key things to remember is it always changes. Don't give me the good old days, because they weren't. For most of geological time, the planet's been warmer than now, and to have ice on the planet is unusual, and in ice ages we go between glaciations and interglacials. We are currently in an interglacial. Our speaker tonight, Lord Monckton, is an extremely eminent person, educated at Harrow, Churchill College, Cambridge, and then the University of Cardiff, and educated in an education system which I wish we had in this country. Educated with classics. Trained in classics and of course logic and the English language. Trained in mathematics, something that many people have avoided, especially climate scientists. And as a result of that, he started his job as a journalist. And as a journalist being critical. Not many of the journalists that we hear on our ABC and the Sydney Morning Herald and other networks where the journalists are operating as advocates. He was a critical journalist dealing with all sorts of issues. And then later moved to the Conservative Central Office, advising on policy, and in the Prime Minister's Policy Unit, and advised Prime Minister Thatcher on matters of scientific and domestic policy. Now, we have in this country one person in federal parliament, in the upper house, who's got science qualifications, and that is Senator Fielding. And in the lower house, we've got one person with scientific qualifications, Dr. Dennis Jensen from the seat of Tangi in Western Australia. That's all we've got. Our science policy advisors in this country are advocates. They are not providing independent advice. He has also been very active in business and has a business administration company, a public administration company, and Sydney has disappointed us. We only have 1,000 people here. Last year he spoke to 100,000 people on Labor Day in the US. He spoke to 15,000 people at a Tea Party rally in Texas last year. And he has created a game called Eternity, a mathematical game. We're dealing with a mathematical